Welcome back. Well, my guest in the studio this evening is none other than textile artist and teacher, Maggie Brand. Welcome, Maggie. I'm so delighted to have you with us. And Maggie has such an interesting history. We're going to delve into that a little bit. Thank you for being here.
Hello, it's all very exciting. I'm on the radio, Mum.
And you're going to find out as well that Maggie is not only as mad as I am, she's also a crazy cat lady, which I just love that you're a crazy cat lady because it's like part of my identity.
When I left university, I was voted the one most likely to have 10 cats and wear kaftans. I've had up to 5 cats and I do wear kaftans.
I love kaftans and cats too. I'm working on attracting my full feline flock at this point.
I just feel I've got some way to go to meet my potential.
Well, from cats to craft. So, Maggie, you have this fascinating life as a textile artist and teacher, but I really want you to take us back to the beginning, from the time of your studies, because you've had some fascinating jobs and you've designed some amazing things. Give us a bit of an outline.
So I didn't start that arty at all. I started with textile and clothing science. I did a degree in the Scottish College of Textiles. It was a course that I didn't even know existed till I put it down on a form just to fill a space. Went for the interview and found out, actually, I loved this course. It was a science degree in clothing studies that taught you everything all the way from how to design it to how to make it and sell it and produce it, the whole of the industrial journey all the way through, with a placement in the middle in a clothing firm. So it was actually a Bachelor of Science, not a Bachelor of Arts, but it taught me the whole creative process at the same time.
And did you discover that you were in fact a lot more creative than you'd thought you would be?
I knew I was always the creative type, but what I discovered is that there's a line of creativity, and it's probably the most important one, and that is being a problem solver.
Yeah.
So here's the problem we've got. How do we fix it? And that was always my favourite thing to do when I was in clothing studies, and then went on to do a postgrad in textile science as well. So I knew all about how the fibres worked, the textiles work, you put them together. The only thing was industrial knitting was my nemesis. I just... And I must have been, you'll find out later I was a textile teacher, and I must have been the only textile teacher that used to send people to the science teacher to learn how to knit. Knitting is my nemesis.
I must say, I'm not the biggest knitting fan either. Oh. I'm a crocheter. I can do one needle. It's the 2 needles that get me befuddled.
No, it's the having to follow a pattern.
Oh, following patterns.
Crochet, you can just go off-piste and do your own thing.
You're exactly right. And I think that's actually why I love it as well, you know. But you've touched on one of my favourite kind of drums to beat, and that is this idea that creativity really is a problem-solving process, and that I feel so strongly that we need to be doing art and craft in the real world and not doing it digitally as much, because there's no undo button in real life. You know, you put paint on a canvas or something, the mark you've made is the mark you've got to work with. And that is a process of problem solving and working through the challenge. So I'm interested when you talk about the problem solving side of the textile design.
But people problem solve and are creative more than they think they are.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get up in the morning and decide whether to wear the fluffy pink socks or the blue ones, you are solving a problem. It's creativity. It's just on a slightly smaller scale.
The problem you're solving might be image.
Yeah, I don't own a pair of pink fluffy socks, just adding that in there.
Now tell me, Maggie, about this fascinating job that you got after studying and so on. I don't want to give the game away, but you landed up working for some pretty interesting people.
So I was a very poor student and did what poor students do and looked for some way to get money for nothing, and found out that the MOD were advertising for a job that I really didn't want, but it was just down the road from a friend and they pay your rail fare. And it was down at the bottom of England and I was still up in Scotland. So went down for the interview. While I was there at the Ministry of Defence, I was asked if I would like to interview for another subject, another job that they were doing, and it was blue sky research. And most people don't know what blue sky research is, but it's, here's a problem we've got, here's a budget, go and find solutions. So I worked for the clothing section of the Ministry of Defence, working for Air Force, Navy, Army, wore combats more than a few times when I was out with the Army, trying to find out what they did. And worked on chemical and nuclear and biological outfits. That makes them sound like costumes, doesn't it? Uniforms.
Yeah.
Worked on ballistic protection, so the stopping them getting bits attached through them. And worked on rain protection, which sounds the most boring, but it was quite interesting as well. So,
what you say rain protection was quite interesting. What in particular was interesting?
Do you know, trying to stop water getting into garments is actually quite a difficult thing to do, because anyone that's stuck their hands in the washing up will know that it makes it all the way up to your shoulder sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not about stopping it just from the top. It's about stopping it from the sides and the underneath and the flaps and absolutely everywhere. So, but it was also looking for new materials. Because we were blue sky research, some of the garments that we made were made from bin bags. We welded together bin bags to show what we could do to make pack-away rainwear.
Okay, now you just opened a whole other Pandora's box, because the minute you say that, it takes me straight into the idea of how we can actually access creativity and problem solving, in fact, really complex problems very often, just by using stuff that is already around us. You don't need necessarily the fancy textiles and all the things to make something from a bin bag. You know, people look at a bin bag and think, oh, that's not very exciting. But actually, it's the thinking behind it and the process of design that allows you to make it very exciting. I mean, you've just proved that by what you're saying.
We had one project that was much more exciting than that, and that was to create a microclimate conditioning vest. So basically, something that kept soldiers cool when they were wearing the full chemical protection in the desert, because most of them were collapsing from heat stress. And it was about blowing air over the body. And the first prototype was made entirely from buying things from a plumber shop.
Wow. And these days you go on Amazon and you buy a Halloween suit as a dinosaur that's got a little fan inside it.
Do you know, yeah, but I hate all those polyester. I grew up in Scotland where Halloween was it wasn't trick or treat. It was because it was originally from Scotland and Ireland, and you used to go around and say, please geese my Halloween, and everyone made their own costume.
Yeah.
And I really miss those days.
Well, maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we need to have Halloween costume making workshops. That would be a fun thing to do.
I used to run Rag to Riches workshops, and I loved them. That was great. It was just taking rubbish and turning them into garments. I'd love to do some more of them.
Oh, I think we might have to have a chat about that in just a moment. Going back to your work with the MOD, tell me about some of the other garments. You spoke about solving problems around nuclear, biological, ballistics, and rainwear. Is that right?
Yes.
So for most of us, when we think about ballistics, I mean, that's stopping bullets, right? We're thinking about Kevlar.
It was working with Kevlar was one of the things.
Kevlar.
And it's not about stopping bullets. It's rarely about stopping bullets. It's about stopping shrapnel. That's what kills soldiers. Bullets rarely hit anything very vital.
Okay.
It's bombs that are the problem.
So in working with Kevlar, I guess someone as ignorant as me, as a lay person, I'm sort of imagining, well, don't you just put Kevlar panels in a vest and you're done? But clearly not.
No, the secretive bit, so I can't talk about this, is about the layers and how you compact them together and where you put them and things like that, because I was secret, sort of a sneaky beaky. So I can't go into too much details, but there is more than just slapping it together and saying, hey!
Right. No, absolutely. And the chemical and biological stuff, what sort of, fabrics or textiles or Materials were you working with there?
Well, the main thing you use, and anyone knows this, there's no going against the trade secrets to do this, trade secrets, the Official Secret Act to say this, is it's activated carbon, and it's exactly the same stuff as you get in your cooker hood that takes the smells away. Because carbon has this, you can seal people in plastic bags, but that's just a horrible thing to do, and it's not that effective. Carbon is amazing. Anyone that knows anything about carbon in science will know that it has an absolutely massive area on the outside of it, and because of that, it absorbs all the chemicals. So it's about using things that absorb the chemicals rather than just stop them in their place.
So activated charcoal.
Yeah.
That's absolutely incredible. Okay, well, Maggie, we are going to get to one of your favourite songs in just a moment. You're listening to Ashdown Radio. I'm Boo Prince. My guest in the studio this evening, the absolutely divine Maggie Brand. We are talking stories about textiles. We're talking about creativity. We're talking about design. And we will also be talking about some workshops. Stay with us. Robert Smith and The Cure with one of my all-time favourites as well, Love Cats. And they're, of course, the choice of my guest, Maggie Brand, who is a textile artist and teacher. And before the break, we were talking a little bit about Maggie's career, which included a period of time working for the Ministry of Defence and working on, clothing for them, for the armed forces and so on, solving problems around ballistics, nuclear and biological, chemical weapons, and also humble old rain, which turns out to be quite a difficult problem to solve. But Maggie, you moved from working with the Ministry of Defence, you've had several other jobs, and eventually realised that you would love to teach and pass on some of this incredible knowledge. But you actually are able to teach a very wide range of things. Tell me some of the breadth of your sort of knowledge.
In schools, so I did teacher degree, and in schools I taught textiles, art, bit of science, food technology. While I was there, I mostly taught art textiles because I was the only art textiles teacher, so took up majority of my timetable. But it was from the clothing degree I was able to go and study to do design technology. And at the time, it was a shortage subject, and every student in school had to take a design technology subject. And they were great days because every kid had to learn the process of creativity through those subjects. And it's a bit of a shame it's gone now because a lot of even universities that teach science are saying there's a lack of creativity within their students and a lack of problem solving, which we already discussed is really what creativity is problem solving. So, yeah, the thing about teaching something like textiles and art is the wide range of subjects you need to be able to cover. So everything from how to do a bit of block printing to how to do multiple mixed media pieces with screen printing and felting and stitching and just about everything you could possibly put together in one item. Because when you're doing an A-level, you can't just paint a pretty picture and that's it. You've got to do lots of different techniques and show your ability in many techniques.
I think there's another side to it as well, and that is that, first of all, so many youngsters, whether they're teenagers or university students or whatever, they're looking for new ways to express themselves, figure out their own identities and pathways and styles and all this kind of stuff. And a wonderful way to do that is through self-expression in your clothing. But when you're a youngster and you haven't necessarily got the money to go and buy whatever, it's incredibly empowering to be able to pick something up from a charity shop and cut it up and stitch it up differently, or design your own or print your own, or whatever the case may be. And I feel like we've kind of disempowered people by not teaching those things anymore.
Yeah, it's actually almost a separate thing to be one of these creative things. For teenagers, it's things like cosplay and stuff, if you really want to go away and make your own things. For older people like me, I do a lot of steampunk. So,
oh, how fascinating. Tell me about that.
So with steampunk, I sell a lot of secondhand clothes as well as my own stuff, on the assumption that people are going to buy them and do them up. And just all they need to be is the right base. And I love watching people make their own things. And I hate it. I really do not like it when people say, oh, look at them, aren't they a dog's dinner? Or they look awful because they've put together an outfit in a weird way. And I think, do you know what? They're learning how to do it right.
Yeah.
I'd rather see someone be creative and do their own thing and not quite get it right than someone wear exactly the same thing as the person beside them that just looks exactly the same as every other teenager.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And funnily enough, recently on the show, we were talking about pirate festivals and making your own pirate outfits.
I'm going to one down in Rye in August.
Well, there you go, you see.
So everyone, at the beginning of August, Rye, for the Pirate Festival, I'll have my purple gazebo there.
There you go. And that's because we were speaking to Zoe Britton on the show. And of course, Zoe is the organizer of
that particular thing. She's invited me down.
One. Yes. So, and again, it's another opportunity for self-expression and creativity and just exploring the process.
And it's not just that, it's also accepting. Steampunks and Pirate Days do not care whether you are a social expert or a social butterfly.
Yes.
They just want you to come along and be part of it. And they're not judgmental. They're really a great place for people. And also because if you wear a costume, you can slightly hide behind it, and that can actually bring you slowly out of your own shell, because there's an anonymity to wearing a costume, and it's almost like having a fortress around you. But it also leads to friends that are similar to you.
Wow. Now you've touched on something really, really important there, because I think that in a time and a world where we are seeing rising levels of social anxiety, it is actually a wonderful, wonderful way of bringing people together in a non-threatening environment, exactly like you say, because you get to almost, well, literally and figuratively in some cases, wear a mask, wear a costume, not be yourself, be able to inhabit a different character that allows you to play a role that may be a bit more confident or social or eccentric or whatever you want to be on the day.
Yeah, eccentrics are all welcome, and it's actually quite an easy thing to play as an eccentric.
Yeah.
You just ham up everything you ever did.
I'd really like to explore some of the techniques that you teach. I mean, we've spoken about sublimation printing. You said felting. Just give people a little bit of a deeper understanding of some of these processes, because I think they sound quite technical. And so most people who are not in your world can't imagine being able to do these things like, in their own lounge or their own garage or whatever.
Unless I call a course an advanced course, I don't expect anyone to know how to do anything that I teach, and I don't expect them to have a flair at anything I teach. I'm a great believer in creativity can be taught. It's a muscle you have to flex. So, excuse me, felting's a great one, but I also teach printing of all sorts, lino cutting, block printing, silk painting. I can teach you how to melt things to make them look really cool. I can teach you how to put things on a mannequin to make it look a bit like a garment, which on the sewing bee they call draping on the stand. But if you've done a textile degree, it's called moulage, darling. It's not draping on the stand. But anyway, I'm getting over that. I'm calming down. But I don't expect you to come along knowing how to do it. I want you to come and learn how to do it. And I don't care if you say you can't draw. I'll provide you with templates. I like people to learn they can do things that they don't think they can do.
Yeah. And some of the techniques that people can sort of learn in a day, give me some understanding of, like, some of them.
So if you come to do some felting, I'll teach you how to do the very basic, here's some fibres, you've just made some fabric. I will teach you how to decorate the fabric afterwards. But I'll also then be able to, if we're going for a whole day, be able to show you how to make a little vessel out of felting. So it'll be a little pot that has 3 dimensions to it.
Wow.
Or even a bag that has 3 dimensions to it that you can wear over your shoulder. So it's creating all the way to making your own fabric to actually making items for your house or things to wear.
And what sort of things do you find are the most popular that people enjoy making?
At the moment, I am mostly just teaching short workshops, and it is the basics of how things work. I want to get into doing longer workshops, more weekly workshops that actually let people go and investigate more how to expand these things. Because when I was teaching in schools, that's what I do. I teach the basics, and then I teach it in a much more in-depth, here's what you can do with this technique. I know a lot of people ask me about sewing classes because they'd like to learn. At this precise moment, I don't have a bank of sewing machines, but thinking of trying to find a place where I can say to people, bring your own, I'll show you the basics, because I'm not precious about it. I don't care if you sew in a straight line to begin with. Mm-hmm. I don't get upset that your stitches are the wrong size. I just want people to have a go. And I think what people want to do is so varied that that's a difficult question to answer. Mm. Because I also know that when you come try a technique, you won't like them all. You'll love some of them, and some of them will go, that one's not for me. But that's part of the fun. And unless you try a whole load, you won't find the ones that you love. I used to run a class and at A-level, and this one I always used to enjoy because the kids would come in and I'd say, we're felting rocks today, and you'd hear them all go, oh, miss, that's rubbish. And always by the end of the day, they'd all be saying, can we do this again? Can we do this again? No, can we do it? You can do it in your own time. So a lot of things people don't think they'd like, but they actually end up loving.
And it's so good for your mental health as well. Just like crafting and getting amongst it and doing things with your hands. I just think it's the best thing ever.
It's why I like working at Victoria Pavilion, because they have wellness events.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is this is to get people away from their everyday life. And the amount of times people tell me that what I teach is really mindful. And it's mindful because you just get stuck into it. You put your concentration in. I mean, there are always times people chat, and it's great fun. But you can always tell there's certain times where you can almost hear their tongue sticking out because they're concentrating so hard.
I love that expression.
Just concentration eking out the pores. And you can't worry about normal life when you're concentrating on something that you are producing.
Because you're in flow. That's how we get into flow, isn't it? It's that you can't be distracted when you're in that moment because you're deep in it.
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So, Maggie, let's hear your next song, and you can introduce it for me.
So there's there's a song that I used to listen to when I was at university, and every time I hear it, it just makes me happy. And that's R.E.M's Shiny Happy People.
Turn up the volume. Here it is. Ashdown Radio, I'm Boo Prince, and this is In Conversation. My guest in the studio this evening, Maggie Brand, the very bubbly, creative and delightful Maggie Brand. She's a textile artist and also a teacher. And we've been talking about, her life and her work and the kinds of things that she has been teaching. And as we were listening to her favorite songs there, I said to her, have you seen those YouTube videos where people felt their cat's fur? Because we've been talking about felting. And then you started to tell me a story. I was like, no, you're not allowed to talk.
Okay.
When
do what I'm told.
When we're not recording. So what were you about to say?
I have, sometimes you've just got this bizarre desire to do something that is unlikely to happen. So with the felted rocks, it's about putting felt round rocks and rubbing them until they look like rocks.
Right.
And then you can take the stone out and put stuffing in. I would love to fill a ball pit with felted rocks and dive in.
Okay, I wasn't expecting to.
No, that is just something I have always had a desire to do. And I know it's not on everyone's bucket list,
Yeah.
but it's there.
It would actually be, I can imagine.
They're really squishy.
Yeah, really squishy, very soft, very pleasurable. I mean, the fact that I just love sticking my face into, the side of my cat and how soft that is and whatever. I could imagine a giant ball pit of sort of, as you say, felted rocks being a similar experience.
Just a thing. Everyone's got their thing.
Well, Maggie, one of the things that I really wanted to speak to you about is we were talking about, at one point, STEM education, in other words, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And you were talking to me about STEAM, in other words, introducing the art aspect into STEM education. Tell me a little bit about your history in that respect.
So there was there still is. There's organisations that wanted to bring the arts back into it because it's pretty important that we actually use arts as well as all these other subjects. So instead of STEM, it becomes STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts and maths. Mm-hmm. And I got to spend a night with this organisation because we were just brainstorming ideas. I was with a fellow teacher from Buckfield College, Andrew Bebb, and we brainstormed ideas all night as to how to get the arts into STEM. Mm-hmm. Because certainly my old jobs were part creative and part science, and there's an awful lot of stuff that we need to, we're good at producing technical stuff in this country, and it's really hard not to include the arts with that stuff. As long as you have problem solving and aesthetics that work, you're going to be successful. But if you miss that problem solving and aesthetics out of the things we're producing, and nobody wants it. So the arts is part of it. Creativity is part of it. Like I said earlier, even with science, you need to be able to problem solve. What do you mean? Even with science, especially in science, yes, you're there to find out new things and problem solve. Engineers need to problem solve. The arts are so important. I used to run days at Uckfield College where the year 8s would be off timetable for a whole day, and we'd do experiments on things like Kevlar, and we'd burn things and we'd look at the science of the fabrics. We would do maths to do with coding and problem solving. We would do engineering and making, was things like we'd give them patterns for garments and see if they could put them back together again. We had all the subjects covered in a creative and scientific and engineering and maths, and they all came together into one subject for a whole day.
Well, what I think is also so important about this is, and you sort of touched on it briefly there, is you can solve all the kind of scientific problems. I mean, talk about like designing a car, for example. You can make it faster, you can make it safer, you can make it more fuel efficient, you can make it all of those things. But if you can't make it beautiful, nobody wants to buy it.
No.
So it's all, it is all in the same thing. And actually recently, Maggie, I was reading a story, I mean, this must have been two days ago, like very recently, about a young girl who had basically combined what she'd learnt in history class with her creative and art class, and she had landed up designing this absolutely breakthrough medical device. A young girl, like a high school student. And essentially the problem that she managed to solve, which clearly loads of clever people had tried to solve but hadn't solved, is that when people are undergoing radiation therapy, if they're cancer patient, etc., very often they are battling to limit that radiation exposure to healthy parts of the body or healthy organ systems, etc., because they haven't been able to design sort of masks or some sort of shield that would protect those organs. Barriers, exactly. And this young girl came up with this idea that why don't we make something that basically works like chainmail. So you can drape it over any part of the body, and it lies on the shape of the body, and you can mask any part of the body. I mean, it's genius. It's absolutely genius. But nobody had thought about it before her.
Do you know, when I was designing for the MOD, we used to look at armour a lot. Because
Oh,
although
really?
old-fashioned armour is certainly not what the MOD wants anymore, we'd look for, I mean, I won't tell you about all the projects, I can't tell you about all the projects, but some of them we'd look at things like armadillos, but also
Yes.
in the freezer they had a penguin so that they could take this, it's called biomimetics.
Yes.
So they'd take the feathers off and trying to work out who that was. They'd look at skulls. So looking at nature and looking at history and looking at all the things that came before in the past is so important to anything you want to do in the future.
And in terms of art as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with one of my kids last night, and I said to him, you know, you don't really get truly straight lines in nature. And he was like, yes, you do, I'll prove it to you, I'll run it, you know. And he ran outside and he went and fetched a leaf and said, look, it's a straight line. And I said, no, if you actually put a ruler next to it, you'll see it's not a straight line. And so much of the stuff around observation, I mean, you've just mentioned biomimicry is so important in engineering. Observation of the natural world and how we bring that into creativity and design. So important. And you don't get that on a screen.
No, ironically, I do quite a lot of digital images, but I do them because it's that thing where you need to learn to draw them in real life before you can learn to draw them on a computer.
Yes, absolutely. So tell me about the work that you are doing right now in terms of, I mean, you've just said, you know, you design something on a screen. You know, I know that you've done all these kind of things like silk printing and all this kind of stuff. Tell me about the stuff that you make now.
So when I was in school, one of the other subjects I taught at A-level was graphics. Mm-hmm. And also when I was in the clothing industry, designing outdoor clothing, all of our images had to be produced on computers because they were going to countries to be made where they didn't speak our language.
Yeah. So
everything had to be very, very visual. So I learned how to use computer graphics. And I love using it. I think it's great fun. So my images are created layer by layer digitally using one of these pens that you don't even look at the screen. So I looked out at my hands working independently of my face looking at the screen.
Right.
Because that's how I learned. That's what computer design was like in my days. And then I print the stuff off, and then I go down to the bottom of the garden and I heat press it onto either things like coasters, which are ready-made, ready to be pressed onto, or I press it onto fabric and make things like scarves out of them and bags out of them and other things like that. Lots of M's. So one of the problems I have nowadays is there is so much AI art out there that I have had people standing in front of my work and saying that's AI.
Wow.
And I know that these things should be watered off a duck's back, but it stings.
Yeah.
It really does sting because I think, actually, could AI do what I do?
That's a question for another day. But what I do want to touch on here is that we are going to be interviewing Jill Wedge in a few days' time. And I know that she always says to me, people who do various different kinds of crafts never actually realize that they could make money from them. And so there is an opportunity to come and learn from you, Maggie, how to do all these different kind of crafts, and then learn from Jill how you can actually market and sell those crafts at a pop-up market as some form of side hustle, perhaps. So I know that you are interested in running workshops, but you also mentioned to me, I mean, of all the workshops you've run, you've also mentioned to me that one of the things you're looking for is spaces to do workshops. So maybe somebody listening is the right person to connect with. Tell us what you're looking for.
So I'd love a space that I can regularly use to run workshops so people know that they can come to this space to do them. One of the things that works really well is if they have an existing database of people that they can say, here's what's going on, or existing social media. Because for someone that's starting out, it is really, really hard, now, even if you throw money at it, to grab people's attention on social media. We all know that no one looks at signs that you put on the side of the road, because we've tried it and it doesn't work very well. So getting your new audience is really, really difficult. So somewhere with an existing database would be great. Somewhere that doesn't cost a fortune, because one of the problems I've got is there's plenty of places out there that I could go in and spend £200 for a day and I could run a workshop there. But I have to then charge on top of my own fee the people that come and do the workshop what I paid. And that is really not what I'm about. My workshop tends to be done in a way that's, here's the cheapest way to do it. You don't have to go out and buy lots of expensive equipment. I'm your sort of typical Glaswegian, I want to keep the costs down sort of a person. I don't think art should be elitist. So I want to show people how you can do this by spending £10 online or going down to the craft shop and buying a couple of things. To then charge people a fortune to do the course is counterintuitive to me. So what I'm really looking for is places where we can run workshops.
Okay, brilliant. So if you have access to, whether it's a large space, or perhaps you have a large social group, or you are one of those great list makers, get in touch with Maggie and see what you can figure out. We could all do with a bit more art and craft in our lives. It's a stress reliever. It's a great way to meet people, and it's a great way to make beautiful things. I know every time I make something, it's beautiful in my eyes, and I feel so proud, and I think that just brings me so much joy. Life's too short to just buy, mass-produced everything, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the things I keep saying to Boo every time I hand her something is, I made that. I made that. And I love doing that.
From the mugs and the coasters to the cushions. I know, it's wonderful. And jewellery and all the rest of it. But Maggie, thank you so much for being with us. Do give us contact details. How can people get hold of you if they want to either do a workshop or host one?
So I have a quite easy to remember email address, and that is Maggie Brand at... Sorry, can I start again? That's Maggie at maggiebrand.co.uk.
Maggie at maggiebrand.co.uk. Brilliant. Maggie, thank you for being with us. You're an absolute delight. And what are we playing out with? You be the DJ. Tell us what it's about.
Something happened the other day that made me really quite happy, and that was I went up, my son who's 17 was playing his playlist, and he had Zombies by the Cranberries, and I realised my son had grown up just like me. He likes the same stuff, and that just made me smile.
Thank you for your time. It's been a joy.